So just to let you know, we really try to keep this to 15 minutes, but we might go about 5 minutes over. Well, we hope you stick with us through it. We appreciate everybody sticking with us so far. I hope you've enjoyed the presentations, but I'll dive right into it. So Tanya and I today are going to be talking about visualizing Microsoft Forms responses in Power BI. So before we dive in, just a little introduction. I'm Renata Kalsbeek. I'm the marketing coordinator for Iteration Insights. I help Chris run the Power Platform user group as well as the Calgary Azure Analytics user groups. You've probably seen me posting all over the place. And if you want to connect with me or have any questions about the groups or about the presentation, you can get in contact with me through my email or connect with me on LinkedIn. I can provide the emails for those after. And I'll pass it over to Tanya to introduce herself.
Thanks, Renata. Hello, everybody. My name is Tanya Zheng. I am the analytics consultant for Iteration Insights. I've actually been with the company for almost 2 years now, and mainly working with Microsoft products, such as like Power BI, analysis services, SSMS, and also Azure. I am actually certified in MCSA BI reporting. To get the badge, you guys just need to pass Power BI exam and also the Excel exam. So if you guys have any questions, welcome reach out to me through email or LinkedIn. Thank you, and I'll pass back to Renata.
Thank you, Tanya. So just a little agenda and overview of what we're going to be talking about. Myself, I'll be looking at Microsoft Forms, Power Automate, and SharePoint. And then I'll hand it over to Tanya, and she'll take you through linking SharePoint to Power BI, some transformations in Power BI, and then connecting and integrating the dashboard to Microsoft Teams. So why are we talking about this? When we were looking to start doing polls for these virtual events, we realized we wanted to use Microsoft Forms and we wanted to visualize it in Power BI. But there's no Power BI connector for Microsoft Forms, so we had to figure out a little bit of a workaround. So the workaround was to use Power Automate. We wanted to do the automation as it would save us time. There would be a real-time connection rather than someone like me having to go in and download the data, upload it to Power BI, and then hand it off to Tanya. And then lastly, the visualizing it within Power BI allowed us to manipulate the data as we wish. Rather than using the native visualizations within Microsoft Forms, we were able to present it exactly how we wanted to see it. So from now on, I'm not going to be using the slides, but just for your information, I do have some screenshots and a little how-to going through the slides that we will provide you after. And I'm just going to dive right into the demo. So starting off, like I said, we're starting in Microsoft Forms. So I have the Forms Pro, but if you have the free version, you should be able to build out any survey that should suit your needs. So first things first is we're going to create a new survey. We're going to title the survey, so Power Platform User Group Demo. Give it a description. This is a demo. And I'm going to show you two types of questions within Microsoft Forms, the two that we use most often. So the first being a choice type question. So our question is going to be, do you use Power BI? And as I type the question, Microsoft Forms is going to give me suggestions for yes, no, maybe, and I'm just going to add all of those. So there you go, quick and simple. The first question is done. And the next question I'm going to show you is the rating question, which you've seen in previous polls. So our question is going to be, how often do you use Power BI? Within the rating question, you have a couple of options. The first option would be to assign how many levels of the rating you would like. You can have up to 10. I'm going to keep it at 5 for this presentation. And then you can also specify what symbol you would like to display. So you have a number option, a star option, and a smiley option. I always prefer the number option. That's just a personal choice. And for every rating question, just a best practice is you should always add a label. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see an ellipses, and you can just select label. And this now allows you to assign a label to each of your, to the number 1 and the number 5 symbol. So our labels are going to be for number one, not very often. So I do not use Power BI very often. And then number 5 would be very often. So I do use Power BI very often. And when you click out, you can see I now have the labels on the question. So there is our survey, all nice and done. And what we're going to do now, once you have that completed, we're going to pop into SharePoint. So we are going to build a SharePoint list where the responses from Microsoft Forms is going to populate. So to do so, just choose the SharePoint site in which you'd like your list to live and create a new list. So we're going to go new list, give it a name, call it PPUG demo. Demo, and we're going to create. So within your SharePoint list, what you will need to do is to create a column for every question that you created in your forms. So we have 2 questions in our form, so we're going to need to create 2 columns within our SharePoint list. So the first column is going to be for our question number 1, so Power BI usage. And what I like to do, so if I don't understand what the name I am putting into the column is, I always like to add the question to description. So if I'm a little bit confused looking back, I can go into the description and know what the question is referencing to. And lastly, you always want to keep the type as single line of text. I believe the information, the data comes in from forms in text form, so we will just leave it as such and save. And then we're going to add our other column for our second question. So Power BI usage amount. We're going to go in and grab our second question, paste it into our description. And even though this question will, the responses will be coming in as a number, we are still going to leave the type as single line of text. And click save. So there you go. There's your SharePoint list, all finished. Once you have both your form and your SharePoint list created is when we will pop into Power Automate. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a Create tab. We'll jump into there, and we'll be creating an automated flow today. So there actually is a template for this flow within Power Automate, but once you see how easy it is to create this flow, I usually prefer to just create it from scratch. So give our flow a name. And we're going to choose the trigger when a new response is submitted. You may need to search for this if you are building this flow out yourself, and click create. I'm actually just going to zoom in for this part. Perfect. So, since we selected the trigger, our forms has already populated with the when a new response is submitted trigger. So what we need to do with this trigger is to point it to the Microsoft form that we are pulling the responses from. So ours is the Power Platform User Group Survey. And then the next step is to get the response details from the form. So Microsoft Forms, get the response details. So this is that so that we can fill in the next action with dynamic content. And once again, we're going to point it to our Power Platform User Group Survey. Or I believe it is demo, actually, Power Platform User Group Demo. There we go. And for the response ID, we are going to populate this with dynamic content. So the dynamic content we are going to use is the response ID. So it matches up. And then a new step. So the last step in this flow was to create an item in SharePoint. So create item in SharePoint. And with this, we will need to we will need to direct this action to the SharePoint site that we created our list in. So we created ours in PPUG demo, and then we're going to need to point it to the list that we created. So once again, PPUG demo, and you'll see that it automatically populated with the columns that we had created. And now we are going to fill these three fields in with dynamic content. So the title is going to match to response ID. So this is so we know that, for example, if I'm the 10th respondent, it's going to show as number 10. And then we will just match up our questions. So do you use Power BI? Into our dynamic content, do you use Power BI? And then how often do you use Power BI? Going to match that up. Perfect. So there we go. We're going to save. That is our flow completely created. And we're just going to do a quick test to ensure that I did it correctly. So I will perform the trigger action, save and test. And then I'll just pop over into my survey form and submit a form. So I use Power BI, but I don't use it very often. Submit. And now if we were to refresh our SharePoint, we can see, oh, did I not? Looks like I probably did not direct it at the correct form. Demo, save, test, and preview. Yes, no, submit. And let's try that again. And there we go. So now you can see that the response has been populated into our SharePoint. And at this point, I am all done, and we can hand it over to Tanya, and she can show you how to connect to SharePoint.
Thank you, Renata. Now I'm going to share my desktop. Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So for my portion, I'm going to take you guys through how we're going to connect Power BI to SharePoint list and building report out of the data that we collected from last user group. Let's take a look at the SharePoint list. We're calling it April PPUG. This is the April Power Platform user group data. Now you can see we have the questions as a column title and also the data we've been collected for last time. So we will actually need to copy the URL to be able to connect to Power BI. So I need to open a new file. So want to go to get data, click on more. This will take you to our get data window. And we want to just type SharePoint. And then click on SharePoint online list. Click on connect. It will ask you to paste your URL here. So I do have it saved it here. Let's just copy and paste it. Now we want to click on OK. Now Power BI is building connection to the SharePoint list. Oh, actually SharePoint site, because this is going to listing all the possible data that you can use. So we're actually looking for April PPUG. Once you get it clicked, you're going to see a data preview on your right-hand side. Just make sure you click on the checkbox here and then click on transform data. Now we have a new window open. Let me bring it over. This is the Power Query Editor window. And now you can see the data that we brought into Power BI actually have a lot more columns compared to what we've seen earlier on the SharePoint list. Let me just give you a little comparison. This is actually the columns we have. So which means we need to do a little bit cleaning out of this raw data. And I'm not going to go through step by step due to the time limitation. Let me just switch to another file which contains all the clean data. Let's save it. Okay, so here we go. This is the clean data. So all the data that you can see, we did a massage a little bit. We only keep the necessary columns. And once you have clean data, we want to be considering the data model. And me and Renata had the early discussion before creating the dashboard. So we know what we want to be seeing later on. And so you want to make sure this data model going to suit your reporting needs. And we break this big flat table into 3 smaller tables. So the fact PPUG contains the created date, attendee ID, question ID, and also the question number people been giving us. So basically the responses. And also we have another table called dim question that's listing the questions ID and all the questions we have. There were like 11 questions, and then the poll number that belongs to things we've been giving out 3 surveys. So we have 1, 2, and 3. And also another table called dim respondent. We've been collecting people's information. So this table contains attendees ID, first name, last name, and email address. And once we are happy with the table, we want to hit close and apply. Just bring the table into Power BI desktop. Now you can see we originally only had 3 tables in the Power Query editor, but you can see the 4th table called dim date. This is because we're using a DAX code to creating this dim date table. And basically what we are using is we looking at the fact PPUG created date column and extracting the year, month, and date number out of that column to creating this dim date table. So if you guys interested in those code, I actually provided a link at the end of the slide under the reference page. I'll show you guys in a bit. It's a really good blog post provided by SQL BI. So welcome to take a look at the end. And before I move on to visualization, I want to show you guys under the fact PPUG table, I actually use switch statement to switch the reading numbers. Remember that Renata were giving you guys like a label when people are saying they are very often using Power BI. This is when they are giving number 5 rating, and when they are not very often using it, which means they will provide us a rating as number 1. So basically this is whole statement here is testing whether the following statement is true or false. We're just giving a convert the number into text format. It will be easier for us to look into it. And also what I did is for the answer column, we actually sort the column by the answer number column that will give you a consistent views throughout different visualizations. I'll show you in a bit. So other than the calculated column we've created, we also added a few measures. Here are the first time attending percentage, next meeting attending, and poll number 1 respondent, number 2, number 3, and total respondent. As you can see, all the measures being listed on the left-hand side on the report page. This is give us like a really nice overview. And we can see, okay, how many people been attending the event, how many of them were in the first part of it, and how many of them stayed till the end. And also I'd like to show the title measure here. What I normally like to use is when I creating a report, and since I'm reusing the same title, I like to create a title measure that you can updating it nice and easily. For example, if I'm missing a 1, I can just add a 1, hit on enter, and then you have the 1 at the end of this page. And also if you switch to the earlier page, you got the 1 updated at the same time. It's just a nice and easier way to do it. Just gonna take it back. So as I mentioned earlier, in terms of that column, answer column sorted by the column name answer number, we're actually using that. So we're sorting this visualization by answer and in a descending format. So if you can see, very often is equals to rating number 5, and not very often is equals to rating number 1. So we're getting a consistent view through different product here. So look at the usage of Power BI and also Power Apps as well. So we'll always have the very often on the left-hand side and the not very often on the right-hand side. Easier to compare the trend. So once we are happy with our dashboard, we want to make sure we save our work. Save, and then now we're ready to publish it. Just click on the publish button under the home ribbon. It will pop up another window, ask you to select a destination. And this is where you want to be choosing the workspace you want to be publishing this report into. So we're looking at the PPUG demo and click on select. Since I have this data set published earlier, so I won't replace it now. I will just hit cancel. If this is your first time publishing this report to the workspace, it will just pop up another link. You can click on that link. It will take you through to the site actually. So I don't need this. So once your report been published to the PPUG demo, you should have a report and also a data set. And I would like to set up a schedule refresh for my data set. Let's go to schedule refresh and under the schedule refresh, give it a minute. So since I've published my report, I believe like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, so I've already turned it on this schedule refresh. If this is your first time, this button should be off as a default. And I give a refresh frequency as daily. You also have like a weekly option here and local time. So mountain time, local Calgary time. And since I'm a pro user, I'll be able to have 8 refresh per day. Now I have like a 5 a.m. in the morning. What about, let's add another one as 8:30 p.m. So at the end of the day, I want to load the data again. And also myself as I put myself here as because when there's a failures like data that didn't refresh properly, Power BI will send me an email like alert. So now you can add multiple people's here, but I'm just using myself as an example. So let's hit apply. And now it says the refresh schedule changes have been applied. Now let me show you where you can look into the refresh history. Just click on that little line there. So as you can see, the first refresh happened since I published this report was on the 5th of May and happened in 5:02 a.m. and took about like 10 minutes-ish. And also I'd like to show you there is some on-demand refresh. This is because I was doing some testings. What happened to this on-demand refresh is when you want your data to load immediately, just to bring your data, the latest data like immediately, what you can do is you can just hit refresh now. Now it says preparing for refresh. Let's get back to that little window again. Now you can see it just happened 6 p.m. right here, and the ending time still blank because the status is in progress. We won't actually wait for that. Let's just close that. Once it's done, it will just change to complete and give your ending time here. And you can see the tab is on demand. So since I have my report published to service, I'm so excited to share with my teammate. And this is the main communication tool we're using, which is Teams. I want to publish it to the PPUG demo channel. So you can click on add a tab, choose Power BI. So under the workspace, we're looking for PPUG demo. And then we have the demo dashboard right here and click on save. Now there we go. You have it just on the top and then you can rename it. Just right click on that. You can just say PPUG demo dashboard. And it will update your title here. Yep, that's about my portion. And let me show you the reference list at the very end of the slideshow here. So this is the DAX, using DAX code to creating a date table that I mentioned earlier from SQL BI. And also, if you guys wondering how we're gonna start with the data modeling, where shall we start? And take a look at the star schema article. Actually, we published it, I think it was earlier May. So it's a pretty new article. Take a look to help you start with your data modeling. And also have the link attached here is create a report and a SharePoint list, and also how to embed your report with Power BI tab for Microsoft Teams at the end. And thank you very much for listening. And thanks so much for staying with us to the end. You guys have